I quit my job 3 months ago without giving notice, and I still can't bring myself to explain why to anyone who asks. It was a good job, honestly. Easy money for overnight work at a data archiving facility about 40 minutes outside the city. The kind of place nobody thinks about, but everyone depends on rows and rows of servers humming in climate-controlled rooms, backing up security footage from businesses, hospitals, and municipal buildings across 3 counties. My job was simple: monitor the systems, swap out failed drives, make sure the backups ran on schedule. Quiet work. Lonely work. The kind of work that pays well because most people can't handle being alone with their thoughts for 8 hours straight. I started noticing the pattern in my second month there. The facility had 16 cameras of its own, covering every hallway, entrance, and server room. During my shifts, I'd keep the security feed pulled up on one of my monitors, partly because it was protocol, partly because it helped me feel less alone in that massive, silent building. I'd gotten used to seeing myself on those cameras, moving from room to room, sitting at my desk, walking to the break room at 2 in the morning for bad coffee. But then I noticed something off about Camera 12. Camera 12 covered the south corridor, the long hallway that connected the main server room to the emergency exit. I walked down that hallway at least a dozen times each shift. And one night, around 3 a.m., I was heading down it when I happened to glance at my monitor. I could see myself on Camera 12, walking down that hallway. But my reflection in the emergency exit door at the end of the corridor showed me raising my hand to scratch my face. On the camera feed, my hand stayed at my side. It was subtle, the kind of thing you could easily dismiss as a lag in the feed, maybe a fraction of a second delay. I convinced myself that's exactly what it was. These were old cameras, after all, not exactly cutting-edge technology. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next night I tested it. I walked down the south corridor deliberately, making specific movements. I'd stop, turn around, wave at the camera. Simple things. And I'd watch the monitor as I did it. The feed matched my movements perfectly. No delay at all. I tried to put it out of my mind, but you know how it is when something doesn't sit right. It's like a stone in your shoe. You can ignore it for a while, but eventually, it's all you can think about. The thing is, the footage we archived wasn't just from our facility. We stored months, sometimes years of security video from our clients. Hundreds of thousands of hours. And part of my job was to occasionally retrieve specific footage when clients requested it, a theft investigation, an insurance claim, whatever. A week after the corridor incident, I got a retrieval request that made my skin crawl. It came from Lakewood General Hospital, asking for footage from one of their parking garage cameras. Standard stuff. They gave me the date and time, September 14th, between midnight and 1 a.m. I pulled up the archive and loaded the footage. What I saw was a parking garage at night, empty, well lit. A single car parked near the entrance. The timestamp in the corner read 12:07 a.m. For about 3 minutes nothing happened, just a static shot of concrete and fluorescent lights. Then I saw someone walk into the frame. It was me. I was wearing the same jacket I had on right then at that moment, sitting at my desk. Same shoes. I watched myself on the footage walk across the parking garage, look directly at the camera and mouth something. I couldn't hear audio, these were video-only feeds, but I could read my own lips. I was saying, check camera 12. My hands went cold. I minimized the hospital footage and pulled up our live feed. Camera 12 showed the south corridor. Empty. I stared at it for a solid minute, my heart hammering. Then I saw myself walk into the frame. But I was still sitting at my desk. I looked down at my hands, at my keyboard, at the half-empty coffee cup beside my mouse. I looked back at the monitor. On camera 12, I watched myself walk down the corridor, stop in the middle, and turn to face the camera. I watched myself stand there, perfectly still, staring directly into the lens. I watched myself stay there for 30 seconds, not moving, not blinking. Then I watched myself walk back out of frame. I didn't move from my desk for the rest of that shift. I sat there, rigid, watching all 16 camera feeds at once, waiting to see myself appear somewhere I wasn't. It didn't happen again that night. But I knew I should have left then, should have walked out and never come back. I didn't, though, because some stupid, curious part of my brain needed to understand what was happening, needed to know if I was losing my mind or if something genuinely impossible was occurring in that building. The next shift, I went through the archives systematically. I started pulling random footage from random dates from all our clients, gas stations, office buildings, shopping centers, school hallways. I found myself in 11 different locations, on 11 different dates, all before I'd ever started working at the facility, before I'd even applied for the job. In one clip, I was standing in the lobby of a bank, facing away from the camera at 2 in the morning. In another, I was walking through an empty grocery store, moving down the aisles like I was looking for something. In another, I was sitting in a parked car outside a church, just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel for 40 minutes straight. The dates went back 2 years. I'd never been to any of those places. I'd never even heard of half of them. But there I was, clear as day, captured by cameras I didn't know existed, in buildings I'd never entered. The oldest footage I found was from May 2022, a residential security system in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. The camera was pointed at someone's front door. I watched myself walk up to that door at 4 in the morning. I watched myself stand there perfectly still for 6 minutes. Then I watched myself turn around, walk back down the driveway, and disappear off camera. The timestamp in the corner said the date was May 19th, 2022. My mother's funeral was May 19th, 2022. I was at the service that day. I was with family. I was 30 miles from wherever this house was. That's when I realized I had two choices. Accept that I was having some kind of psychotic break and get help, or accept that something was using my face, my body, my entire identity, and had been doing so for years. I chose the third option. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out the envelope I'd found there on my first day, the one labeled with my name in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow looked familiar, the one I'd been too afraid to open. Inside was a single piece of paper with 3 words written in the center. Don't check 14. I looked at the monitor. Camera 14 covered the archive room, the room where all the physical backup drives were stored, the room I'd walked past hundreds of times but never actually entered because it was locked and I'd never been given access. The door to that room was open. I could see it on camera 14, just slightly ajar, and I could see something moving inside, just a shadow, just a shape. But it was moving in a way that made my stomach turn because the movement was too familiar. The way it shifted its weight, the way it tilted its head. I stood up from my desk. I don't know why. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood up and I started walking toward the archive room. I made it halfway down the corridor when I heard it. The sound of my own footsteps echoing from somewhere else in the building, not matching my rhythm, not following my pace, just walking, somewhere close, getting closer. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't check any cameras. I just ran straight for the exit, left everything behind, got in my car and drove. I never went back, not to get my last paycheck, not to collect my things, not even to turn in my access badge. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about, the thing that keeps me up at night. Before I left, just for a second, I glanced at the monitor one last time. Camera 12 showed the south corridor, empty like always. Except for a single line of text, burned into the bottom of the feed like a subtitle. It wasn't part of the camera system. It wasn't part of the interface. It was just there, white letters on a black screen. See you at your next job. I've been unemployed for 3 months now. I'm running out of savings. I'll need to start applying for work again soon. and I can't shake the feeling that no matter where I go, no matter what job I take, there's going to be a camera somewhere, and I'm going to be on it before I ever arrive. I found the folder 3 days after my supervisor disappeared. Not missing, disappeared. There's a difference. Missing means someone's looking. Disappeared means the building directory still listed him, his nameplate still hung outside his office, but when I asked HR about him, they looked at me like I'd made him up. I worked in records management for a mid-sized insurance firm, 7th floor, the kind of job where you stop noticing the hum of the HVAC after the first week. My supervisor's name was Derek Millhouse. I'd emailed him every morning for 11 months. The folder was in the break room filing cabinet bottom drawer behind the expired condiment packets. Manila, standard issue, but the tab was handwritten in blue ballpoint. Claimant recurring personal attention required asterisk. Inside were photocopies of claim forms, all dated between 1997 and 2004, all from the same policyholder. A woman named Laura Kessick. Each claim was for water damage. Burst pipe in the basement. Ceiling leak in the master bedroom. Flooded kitchen. 17 claims total, every single one approved, every payment issued to the same address on Collier Street. I wouldn't have cared except the address was my address, the house I'd been renting for 8 months. The paperwork listed Laura Kessick as the homeowner, but when I'd signed my lease, the landlord's name had been Raymond Oakes. I'd never heard of Laura Kessick. I checked the county assessor's website that night on my phone, sitting in my car in the parking garage. Battery at 34%. The record showed Oakes had owned the property since 2006. Before that, a gap. No prior owner listed, just a blank field where the name should have been. I brought the folder home. I don't know why. Maybe because Derek was gone and nobody else seemed to remember him. Maybe because I'd been hearing water running in the walls at night and my landlord kept saying he'd send someone but never did. The house was a narrow 2-story colonial, white paint peeling near the roofline, hedges overgrown in a way that felt intentional, like they were trying to hide the windows. The kitchen faucet dripped no matter how tight I cranked it. Some nights I'd wake up to a rhythmic thudding from somewhere below me, slow and wet, like something heavy dragging across a soaked carpet. When I went downstairs, the sound would stop. The baseboards were always dry. I started going through the claims more carefully. Each one included a handwritten adjuster's note. The handwriting changed from claim to claim, but the phrasing was nearly identical. Claimant distressed. Visible water damage consistent with reported cause. Approved for full replacement value. On the 9th claim, dated August 2001, someone had added a second line in pencil. Recommend site review, possible pattern. There was no site review in the file. I called the landlord on a Tuesday morning before work. It rang 4 times, then clicked over to voicemail. The automated voice said the mailbox was full. I tried again that afternoon. Same result. I checked my lease agreement that night, spread it out on the kitchen table under the overhead light. His signature was there next to mine, but when I looked at the emergency contacts section, his phone number was listed as all zeros. The dripping got worse. I started keeping a towel under the faucet, wringing it out every morning. The cotton smelled like rust and something else, something faintly sweet like old fruit left too long in the sun. I mentioned it to my coworker Janet casually while we were sorting files in the archive room. She nodded, said she'd had a leak once, said sometimes old houses just do that. Then she paused, hands still on a file box, and asked if I'd heard anything about Derek. I said no. She looked at me for a long time, fluorescent light catching the edge of her glasses, and said she didn't think anyone named Derek had ever worked on our floor. I went back to the break room that afternoon. The filing cabinet was gone. In its place was a water cooler, the 5-gallon jug half empty, condensation beading on the plastic. I asked the office manager where the cabinet went. She said there'd never been a filing cabinet in the break room, just the table, the microwave, and the water cooler. I still had the folder. I checked. It was in my bag right where I'd left it. That night I went down to the basement. I'd only been down there once, the day I moved in, long enough to find the breaker box and make sure the hot water heater worked. The stairs were unfinished wood, steep and narrow, and they creaked under my weight in a way that felt deliberate, like the house was announcing my presence to something below. The air smelled like wet concrete and ozone, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. At the bottom, I pulled the chain on the overhead bulb. 40 watts, maybe less. Barely enough to see. The floor was dry, concrete painted gray, no cracks, but along the far wall near the furnace the paint was darker, stained in a wide, uneven bloom that spread from the baseboard up to about waist height. I knelt and pressed my palm against it. Cold. Damp but not wet. When I pulled my hand back my skin smelled like rust. There was a door in the corner I hadn't noticed before. Wooden, narrow, no handle, just a black iron latch. I lifted it. The door swung inward on silent hinges. The space beyond was smaller than a closet, maybe 3 feet deep, walls made of old brick that glistened faintly in the dim light. The floor was lower than the basement floor, a step down, and it was wet. Not damp, wet. An inch of standing water, completely still, surface smooth as glass. In the center of the water was a pale shape. I leaned closer. It was a photograph floating face up. The image was faded but clear enough. A woman standing in a kitchen, smiling, one hand resting on the edge of a sink. Behind her, through a window, I could see the overgrown hedges of my front yard. I didn't touch it. I backed out, relatched the door, and went upstairs. My hands were shaking. I checked the lease again. The address was correct. I checked the claims again. 17 water damage incidents, 17 payments, all to Laura Kessick, all to this house. I haven't called anyone. I don't know who I'd call. Derek's gone. The filing cabinet's gone. My landlord doesn't answer. And every night just after I turn off the light I hear it, that slow, wet, dragging sound moving through the walls up from the basement, getting closer. The faucet still drips. I still wring out the towel, the folders on my kitchen table next to the lease. I haven't gone back to the basement. I don't think I will. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the claims ever really stopped.